Hello and welcome to another very chill reading reset video. If you're not sure what these videos are, they're usually done at the end of the month to kind of reset from the previous month, reflect on what happened and what worked and didn't work, and then to organize yourself ready for the new month. Normally they're used for sort of lifestyle, organization, finances kind of stuff, but a few people have started doing them for reading as well, including myself. So I'll be talking about what I read, what my reading goals were, and what I'm looking forward to reading in March, and just organizing my TBR cart and all of that kind of stuff as well. So I've got myself a little cup of tea, and I'm just going to start reflecting. So February was less of a good reading month for me than January was. I read 2.5-ish books. So I read 2 books and I didn't quite finish Breadfruit, which was the last book that I was reading in February, but I've only got I think 100 or so pages left, and it's been quite a quick and easy read, so I don't think I'll have any issues getting through the last of that in March. Not as good as January. January was definitely a strong start to the year, especially after having been in such a reading slump, and I guess it's not surprising that February wasn't as good. Part of the problem was that the only books that I had left to read in February were the ones that I was kind of the least excited about. I read all of the books that I was most excited about in January, and then I spent a lot of time in February putting off starting reading because I wasn't as keen to read the books that I had set aside for myself in February, so that's kind of my own fault. That being said, one of my favourite books that I've read so far was in February. That was The Housekeeper and the Professor. That's one of my top reads so far this year. It's been a very short year, but it's definitely up there. The main problem area for February was reading Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. This is the longest book that I've read so far this year. It's like 450 pages, and I listened to the audiobook of it and I just struggled with it a lot. I found the narration to be really awkward and made it very difficult for me to get into the book, so I definitely spent a lot of time sort of putting off reading it and reading it very slowly. Slurp. Oh, we've run out of milk and we haven't done the grocery shopping yet, so I'm drinking black tea, which I don't hate, but it's definitely not my favourite kind of tea. And if I'd known that we didn't have milk before I started brewing tea, I would have chosen a different tea to make. But that's fine. I can't really remember what I said I wanted to do for February, so maybe I'll just have a quick look at my previous reading reflection video and see what I said about my Feb goals.
I don't have anything too much that I want to change, definitely not in terms of the actual reading goals. Like TBR has been working really well, audiobooks have been working really well, annotating books has been going really well. The only goal that I guess I want to maybe reflect more on and change going forward is some of my actual booktube goals, or like book community goals, I guess. There's a couple of old video series that I want to try and revive now that I'm back on booktube. I won't say too much about that. Yeah, long term I think I want to try and be involved in more book community events as well, like whether that's readathons or buddy reads or reading challenges.
Well, there you go. All of my reading goals were kind of the same, which was to use a TBR, which I guess we finally hit the first hurdle for that, which is that if I have a longer TBR, like these seasonal TBRs are more likely to hit books that I'm less excited about by the end of the season. That's not going to be as much of an issue going into March because it's a new season and I have a whole new TBR to start with, and I'm definitely going to be reading like the books that I'm most excited about from that TBR. I have already spoken about this somewhere, I can't remember which video it was in, but I tend to try and keep my attitude towards my TBRs quite loose, in that if I do feel inspired to read something else, or if I feel drawn to read something else or excited about it, whatever. Whoops. Good job, Jazz. I just spilled tea all over the floor. I don't consider it to be sort of failing my TBR as much. The TBR is just there for me if I can't think of anything else to read, basically. And I think the biggest problem with February is that I'm still feeling pretty sort of slumpy and demotivated, so I didn't really feel drawn to read anything else that I own or have on my shelves. So I was still kind of stuck choosing from that TBR pile that I'd set aside for myself. So I don't think it was necessarily a problem with the TBR, as perhaps just like an unfortunate circumstance of how the TBR and my mood happened to align. Booktube goals I had were wanting to restart some of my old video series from when I first started Booktube, which I haven't yet finalized. So that one I guess is carrying over into March. And then also trying to have a look at some body reads or readathons to participate in, which I also haven't looked at much at all. February was a bit of a dud month for me, I think, in general, reading and booktube wise. But that's okay, that's why we do these check-ins, so that I can think about what I wanted to achieve and work on achieving them in the next month. I'm going to take some time now to go through all of the books that I read in February, all 2 of them, and do my usual reset actions for those books, which is just going through and checking all the book plates and book reviews and stuff like that for them, and then put them back on the shelves and stuff. And then I'll come back and chat about March for a little bit. So let's talk about March. So March goals wise, I don't think there's anything I particularly want to change. I think I just want to move some of those Feb goals along and hope that I actually get to them in March. So working on some booktube series, video series things, trying to find some readathons or body reads that I'm interested in as well. Reading wise, March is the beginning of a whole new season. It's autumn now here in Melbourne, which means I've got a new TBR set up for the next few months for autumn, which is very fantasy forward, but I have tried to diversify it as well. I have a few books on my TBR this season that I don't own as well, which I did specifically so that I could use audiobooks and things like that to help up my reading, so that I'm not sort of buying duplicate audiobooks of books that I already own. Sometimes it's nice to be able to listen to a book and also follow along and write notes for it as well, but it would be useful to be able to use Audible as a chance to explore new books that I don't own too. That being said, to start off, I'm reading this one, which I have actually already started, but I'm only like a chapter or so in, but so far it's exactly what I expected and what I was promised, which is a delight. And then I'm also going to be listening to the audiobook of this monster here, which is obviously a book that I do own, and that's because I bought the audiobook for this on Audible a long time ago, and I'm hoping to use the audiobook to supplement some physical reading of this just to help it go by a bit faster, because it's pretty damn big. That might be the one exception to the using audiobooks for books that I don't own rule for this season. That's all I have. And the only thing that remains is for me to go through and set up my little TBR cart and to set aside all of my bits for these books that I'm going to be reading first, like last month. So that's the whole reading reset video. Very chill and didn't have as much to say this month as I did last month, which might be a good thing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading these books. I'm looking forward to checking in again next month and seeing how I went with all of this stuff. I will see you for another video very shortly, I am sure. And until then, as always, stay classic.